Sir, immigration documents right now.
Good evening, officer. What can
Passport, green card, step out now.
Get you. Fireworks out.
I was born here. I'm
No stories.
out of the kiosk.
I'm the district
Call my
attorney
office,
of DC.
district attorney, and that
Icy agent Paul Davis had no idea who he had just stopped and arrested right in the middle of the 4th of July fireworks at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. He saw a black man in a simple kiosk worker uniform and decided that was enough reason to demand immigration papers during one of the most joyful celebrations of the year. In the hours that followed, that single decision would cost Agent Davis his career, land him in court facing discrimination charges, force him to pay a substantial fine, and ultimately help spark real reforms, all because the man he targeted was no undocumented vendor. He was District Attorney Elijah Harris, a devoted family man simply helping his son-in-law on a holiday. The encounter carried every hallmark of racial profiling, and it would expose how assumptions based on skin color and appearance can shatter lives in seconds. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever been treated unfairly by someone in power simply because of how you looked or what uniform you were wearing that day? Drop your answer in the comments. To understand just how wrong this arrest was, you need to know exactly who Elijah Harris is, a man whose entire life has been defined by quiet kindness, unbreakable integrity, and a deep commitment to justice for everyone. Elijah was born on March 15, 1978, in the tight-knit Anacostia neighborhood of Washington, D.C. His mother, Clara Harris, a single parent and full-time nurse, raised Elijah and his two younger sisters on a modest salary, working long shifts at Howard University Hospital. Money was always tight, but Clara taught her children that real strength comes from lifting others up. Elijah took that lesson to heart. At just 10 years old, when a neighborhood boy with a limp was being bullied, Elijah stepped in calmly, talked the bully down, and then spent the rest of the afternoon teaching the boy how to shoot free throws. That moment set the tone for a lifetime of compassion. In high school at Anacostia Senior High, Elijah was both academic star and basketball captain. He graduated valedictorian in 1995 while holding down a part-time job at a corner store to help pay bills. On the court, he led the team to the city championship, dropping 28 points in the final game, but teammates still talk about how he stayed after every practice to work with the younger players who never got playing time. Elijah never left anyone behind, one former teammate recalled. He made sure we all felt like winners. Summers were spent volunteering at the local Boys and Girls Club, tutoring kids in math and reading, and organizing free basketball clinics that kept dozens of teens off the streets. After earning a full scholarship to Howard University, Elijah majored in political science and criminal justice. He graduated magna cum laude in 2000 and headed straight to Georgetown University Law Center, finishing in the top 10% of his class in 2003. While in law school, he interned at the D.C. Public Defender's Office, often working late nights to dig up evidence that freed clients who had been misidentified. One case in 2006 saw him exonerate a father of three who had spent 5 years behind bars. Elijah not only won the acquittal, but personally helped the man find housing and a job afterward. Colleagues called him the defender with a heart of gold. In 2010, Elijah joined the district attorney's office as an assistant DA. He quickly earned a reputation for being tough on violent crime, yet merciful on first-time non-violent offenders. He launched the Second Chance program that diverted hundreds of young people into job training instead of jail, cutting recidivism in participating groups by nearly 20%. In 2018, at age 40, he ran for district attorney and won with 68% of the vote, carrying every ward in the city. As DA, he introduced mandatory bias awareness training for prosecutors, reviewed old cases for fairness, and created legal clinics that offered free advice to thousands of low-income residents. Awards followed the 2016 DC Bar Community Leadership Award, the 2019 Martin Luther King Jr. Justice Medal, and the 2021 NAACP Legal Achievement Award. At home, Elijah is the same gentle giant. Married to his high school sweetheart Michelle since 2004, the couple has 2 children, daughter Aisha, 20, and son Jamal, 17. Aisha married Marcus in 2021. Marcus owns a small food kiosk business called DC Delights. When Marcus came down with a severe flu on July 3, 2022, Elijah didn't hesitate. Family helps family. He told his son-in-law with that warm smile of his, "You rest. I'll take the July 4th shift at the memorial." So on that sunny holiday, Elijah put on the simple kiosk uniforms, A navy blue polo shirt with the white DC Delights, fresh snacks for the nation's capital logo, crisp khaki pants, comfortable black sneakers, and a name tag that simply read Elijah. At 6'2" with an athletic build kept sharp by weekend basketball games, dark, smooth skin, short, neatly cropped black hair with just a touch of silver at the temples, and kind brown eyes that always seemed to say, "I've got you." He looked exactly like the friendly neighborhood guy he truly was. Elijah's kindness extended far beyond family. He coached Jamal's youth basketball team every Saturday, mentored more than 50 at risk teens through a local program, and spent countless weekends delivering groceries to elderly neighbors or helping single mothers with paperwork for benefits. In 2017, when historic flooding hit parts of Maryland, Elijah organized a relief convoy from his office, personally driving supplies to shelters. During the height of the pandemic, he quietly paid rent for 3 families in his old Anacostia neighborhood so they wouldn't lose their homes. His garden behind the family house in Capitol Hill is legendary. Tomatoes, peppers, and herbs that he shares with anyone who knocks on the gate. "Growing things reminds me that with care, anything can flourish," he often says. On July 4, 2022, the weather in Washington was picture perfect 85 degrees, clear blue skies, a gentle breeze carrying the smell of grilled hot dogs and cotton candy across the National Mall. Thousands of families spread blankets on the grass in front of the Lincoln Memorial, American flags waving, children running with sparklers, the air buzzing with excitement for the evening fireworks. Elijah arrived early, set up the kiosk, and spent the afternoon cheerfully serving customers, handing out cold sodas, hot dogs, and popcorn with that signature warm smile, chatting about the fireworks show and what freedom really means. "This is America at its best," he told one family, people from every background coming together. As the sun dipped lower and the first test fireworks cracked overhead, Elijah wiped down the counter, completely at peace, never imagining that a federal agent was about to turn his night of service into a nightmare. Let me know in the comments if you've ever seen someone judged purely by their appearance or the clothes they were wearing. Type justice if you think no one should ever have to prove they belong in their own country on a holiday meant to celebrate freedom for all. Now we have to talk about the other side of this story, the man who made the call that night. ICE Enforcement and Removal Operations Agent Paul Davis. 42 years old at the time, white, 6'1", broad-shouldered clothes, cropped brown hair starting to thin on top, pale blue eyes that rarely softened, and a permanent tight-lipped expression that made people feel like they were already being sized up. Born in 1980, in a small suburb outside Richmond, Virginia, Paul grew up in a household where his father, a retired state trooper, drilled into him that authority must be respected at all costs, and that anyone who questioned it was probably hiding something. His mother worked as a clerk in a county courthouse, so the family always had stories of the system working when people followed the rules. Paul joined the Marine Corps right out of high school in 1998, served one tour in Iraq during the early 2000s, and left the service in 2006 with an honorable discharge and a chest full of ribbons he rarely talked about. After the military, he applied to ICE, got accepted in 2008, and was assigned to the Washington, D.C. field office. On paper, his record looked solid: numerous administrative arrests, several high-profile workplace raids, consistent, meets expectations, performance reviews. But dig a little deeper, and people did dig after July 4, 2022, and a pattern emerges. A pattern of targeting people who didn't look right in his eyes. Let's go back. In 2011, while working a routine bus terminal check in Northern Virginia, Paul detained a U.S.-born Latino construction worker who was traveling home from a job site. The man spoke perfect English, had a Virginia driver's license, social security card, everything. Paul still held him for 3 hours, ran every database he could, and only released him after a supervisor intervened. The worker later filed a complaint. It was dismissed as within policy. In 2014, at a metro station in D.C., Paul stopped a black college student wearing a Howard University hoodie and demanded ID because the student matched a description. No description existed. The student recorded the encounter on his phone. Paul threatened to charge him with obstruction before letting him go. Internal Affairs looked at it and called it a misunderstanding. By 2017, the complaints started piling up more quietly. A 2017 workplace raid on a landscaping company in Maryland. Paul personally zip-tied and questioned every black and brown employee first, even those with valid work permits on file. 2 U.S. citizens were detained overnight before being cleared. One filed a formal grievance through his union. It went nowhere. In 2019, during a routine traffic stop near Reagan National Airport, technically outside ICE primary jurisdiction, but Paul was assisting local police. He pulled over a black family returning from a vacation. The father showed a DC driver's license, registration, insurance. Paul still asked for immigration status, ran the plates twice, searched the trunk for safety, found nothing, and let them go after 25 minutes. The mother later told friends she felt humiliated in front of her children on the side of the road. Then came 2020. Protests were raging across the country. Paul was detailed to help with crowd control near federal buildings. Multiple witnesses, including other agents, reported him singling out black demonstrators for extra scrutiny, demanding IDs even when they were clearly local residents. One video from a body cam, later obtained in discovery, shows him telling a peaceful protester, "You don't belong here tonight," before cuffing him for failure to disperse. Even though dispersal orders hadn't been given yet. The charges were dropped within 48 hours, but the protesters spent a night in holding. In early 2022, just 5 months before the Lincoln Memorial incident, Paul was the subject of an informal counseling session after a coworker overheard him in the break room saying, "If they look like they don't belong, they probably don't." Simple as that. The supervisor documented it but took no formal action, verbal counseling only. Paul kept his gun, badge, and authority. Colleagues described him 2 ways. Some said he was old school, by the book, gets results. Others, usually in private, called him rigid, quick to escalate, and far too comfortable assuming guilt based on appearance. He lived alone in a modest townhouse in Fairfax County, Virginia, drove a black Ford F-150, spent most weekends at the range or watching military history documentaries. No wife, no kids, no close friends outside work. Paul doesn't do small talk, one former partner said. He does enforcement. On July 4th, 2022, Paul Davis was assigned to routine roving patrol around the National Mall and memorial sites, standard holiday duty for federal agencies in D.C. ICE often deploys agents during large public events under the guise of national security support and immigration enforcement readiness. Paul wore his standard Navy raid jacket with ICE in bright yellow letters across the back, black tactical pants, duty belt loaded with handcuffs, taser, service weapon, extra magazines. His credentials hung around his neck on a lanyard. He carried a small notebook and pen, ready to jot down anything suspicious. The sun had just set. The sky exploded with the first official fireworks, red, white, blue cascades lighting up the reflecting pool, and the face of Abraham Lincoln staring out from the memorial. Cheers rose from the crowd. Music thumped from speakers. Families oohed and aid. Paul walked the perimeter, eyes scanning. He passed food trucks, souvenir stands, porta, potties, clusters of teenagers taking selfies. Then he saw the DC Delights kiosk near the bottom of the memorial steps. A small metal trailer with a serving window, string lights, a hand-painted menu board offering hot dogs, pretzels, bottled water, and ice cream bars. Behind the window stood Elijah Harris in his navy polo and khakis, handing a snow cone to a little girl while her father paid. Paul stopped, watched. Something didn't sit right with him. A black man working a kiosk on federal property during a major national event. No visible green card, no obvious citizen vibe. In Paul's mind, he adjusted his jacket, squared his shoulders, and started walking straight toward the trailer. Elijah noticed him approaching, offered the same warm smile he'd given every customer that day. "Evening, sir. What can I get you?" Fireworks just started, perfect timing for a cold drink. Paul didn't smile back. "Sir, I need to see your immigration documents. Right now. If you believe someone should never be asked to prove their right to exist in their own country just because of how they look, type justice in the comments right now." The moment ICE agent Paul Davis demanded immigration papers from the man behind the DC Delights counter, the 4th of July celebration at the Lincoln Memorial shifted from joy to tension in the blink of an eye. It was exactly 9:12 p.m. on July 4, 2022. The sky above Washington, D.C. was a living canvas of exploding color, Massive chrysanthemum bursts in red, white, and blue, followed by screaming rockets and glittering waterfalls that reflected off the still waters of the reflecting pool. The temperature hovered at 82 degrees with a light breeze carrying the scent of fresh popcorn, grilled hot dogs, and distant river water. Families sat shoulder to shoulder on blankets, kids waved glow sticks, and the 1812 overture boomed from the park's speakers in perfect sync with the fireworks. Elijah Harris stood inside the small metal kiosk, the navy polo shirt with the white DC delights, logo slightly damp from the evening humidity, his name tag clearly visible under the string lights. He had just handed a snow cone to a little girl when Paul stepped right up to the serving window, blocking the line. "Sir, I need to see your immigration documents right now," Paul said, his voice flat and commanding, one hand resting on the counter, the other near his duty belt. Elijah blinked once, then offered the same warm, disarming smile he had given every customer that day. His kind brown eyes stayed steady. "Good evening, officer. I'm sorry, I must have misheard. What can I get for you? The fireworks are incredible tonight, aren't they? Cold drink to enjoy the show?" Paul did not smile. His pale blue eyes narrowed. "I said immigration documents. Passport, green card, proof of legal status. This is a federal enforcement action." Step out of the kiosk. A young mother who had just paid for 2 hot dogs froze mid-step, her toddler on her hip. She slowly raised her phone. 2 college students 10 feet away exchanged glances and pulled out their phones as well. Elijah kept his hands clearly visible on the stainless steel counter, palms open. "Officer, I was born right here in Washington, D.C. in 1978. I'm a United States citizen. I'm simply helping my son-in-law tonight because he's sick. This is his business. I don't carry my passport while I'm serving food. My driver's license is in my wallet in the back of the kiosk. But I promise you, this is not necessary." Paul leaned closer, his broad shoulders filling the window. "I don't want your life story. I want papers. If you can't produce them immediately, you're coming with me. Out of the kiosk. Now." Elijah took one slow, deliberate breath, the same breathing technique he used before addressing a jury. He thought of his wife Michelle at home, probably watching the live fireworks on TV with their son Jamal, both wondering how the shift was going. He thought of his daughter Aisha and how proud she would be that her dad stepped in to help Marcus. He refused to let fear enter his voice. "Sir, my name is Elijah Harris. I am the district attorney for the District of Columbia. I can give you my office number right now, 2025550147. Call them. They will confirm everything in 30 seconds. There is no need for this." Paul's face hardened. A short, bitter laugh escaped him. "District attorney. In a food kiosk uniform? Nice try. Every person I stop has a story. Turn around, hands behind your back. I'm not asking again." At that exact second, a massive firework detonated overhead, a deafening boom, followed by a shower of golden sparks that lit up the entire memorial steps. The crowd cheered wildly. But around the kiosk, the atmosphere changed. 3 more phones rose. An elderly black couple nearby gasped audibly. A man in a red U.S.A. T-shirt muttered, "This can't be real." Elijah nodded slowly, keeping every movement calm and visible. "I am cooperating fully, officer. I'm stepping out now." He wiped his hands on a clean towel, walked around the side of the kiosk, and stood tall, 6'2", athletic frame straight, dark smooth skin glistening slightly under the lights, short black hair with silver temples perfectly neat. His khaki pants and black sneakers were spotless from the careful work he had done all afternoon. Paul immediately moved behind him. "Hands behind your back." Wider. The agent's grip was iron, tight as he yanked Elijah's wrists together. The cold steel handcuffs clicked once, twice, ratcheting down harder than necessary, biting into Elijah's skin. Elijah winced but made no sound. "You have the right to remain silent," Paul began reciting in a rushed monotone. "Anything you say can and will be used against you." While Paul spoke, Elijah kept his head high, looking straight ahead toward the glowing statue of Abraham Lincoln. In his mind, he repeated the words he had lived by for decades. "Justice is not given, it is demanded with dignity." He could feel the eyes of the crowd on him. A woman's voice carried over the next firework whistle. "Hey, was just selling snacks to kids? What is this?" Paul ignored her, gripping Elijah's upper arm with bruising force and pulling him away from the kiosk. "Federal matter. Everyone move back. Nothing to see here." But people did not move back. At least 7 phones were now recording openly. Bright screens cutting through the night, capturing every second. The tight cuffs, Paul's aggressive posture, Elijah's calm, composed walk despite the humiliation. A group of veterans in their 60s stood up from their blanket, one shouting, "Show some respect. It's the 4th of July." Paul shoved Elijah forward another step toward the unmarked black icy sedan parked on the service road 50 yards away. "Keep walking. Save the speeches for the station." Elijah's voice remained steady, loud enough for the phones to catch clearly. "Officer Davis, I am asking you respectfully to check my identity before this goes further. I have served this city for years fighting for fairness. This does not feel fair." Paul's only response was to tighten his grip and push Elijah's head down as they reached the sedan door. "In you go." The car door slammed shut at 9:19 p.m. Inside the back seat, the air was cooler, smelling of vinyl and faint coffee. Elijah sat upright, handcuffs digging into his wrists, fireworks still exploding in spectacular patterns outside the tinted window. He watched the Lincoln Memorial grow smaller as Paul started the engine. In that moment, Elijah felt a quiet fire building inside, not anger for himself, but determination that no one else should ever have to endure this on a night meant to celebrate freedom for all. At least a dozen witnesses had now captured the entire arrest on video, from the first demand to the moment the sedan pulled away into the night. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where someone in authority decided who you were before you could even speak? Drop your answer in the comments. If you believe no one should be treated like a criminal simply because of the color of their skin or the clothes they wear on a national holiday, type justice right now. Let me know in the comments if you've ever seen a pattern like this in your town. The black icy sedan pulled away from the Lincoln Memorial at 9:21 p.m. Fireworks still painting the sky in brilliant explosions while Elijah Harris sat handcuffed in the back seat. His wrists throbbed under the two tight cuffs, but his face remained calm, eyes fixed on the passing monuments. Paul Davis gripped the wheel, jaw clenched, glancing in the rearview mirror every few seconds as if expecting Elijah to vanish. "You're being detained for immigration enforcement," Paul stated flatly, voice echoing in the quiet car. "Failure to produce documents, possible unlawful presence. We'll sort it at the station." Elijah spoke evenly, every word clear. "Officer Davis, I have told you my name and position. I am District Attorney Elijah Harris. This is a mistake that can be fixed with one phone call. I am not resisting. I am cooperating completely." Paul snorted. "Save it. I've heard every story. People like you always have an angle." The drive to the ICE field office in downtown Washington took 23 minutes. During that time, Paul radioed ahead. One male in custody, possible undocumented, uncooperative at scene. Elijah sat silently, counting his breaths, thinking of his daughter Aisha, who would be worried if he didn't text soon, of his wife Michelle waiting at home with popcorn and the TV on. He refused to let panic rise. At 9:44 p.m., they arrived at the secure garage. Paul yanked Elijah out, marched him through a side door, past 2 other agents who raised eyebrows but said nothing. First came the search. Paul and another officer emptied Elijah's pockets in a small processing room wallet with DC driver's license clearly showing Elijah T., Harris 1234 Capitol Hill Lane, credit cards, house keys, a small photo of his family, and exactly $47 in cash from kiosk sales. They patted him down thoroughly, removed his shoes, checked the kiosk uniform. Nothing illegal, no contraband, no fake documents. Just an ordinary wallet belonging to a man who had spent the day serving hot dogs to families. "See," Elijah said quietly. "Everything is right there." Paul ignored him, logged the items as personal effects of detainee, then led Elijah to a holding cell. The cuffs stayed on, tight, cutting into skin, for the next 4 hours. Elijah sat on the cold metal bench, back straight, refusing to complain. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Distant voices of other detainees echoed down the hall. At one point, a female agent walked past, saw the name tag still pinned to his polo, and paused, but kept walking. Around 1:15 a.m., they moved him to an interrogation room. Windowless, gray walls, metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs. Paul entered first, slamming a folder down. A second agent, older white male named Agent Ramirez, followed. The good cop, who offered Elijah a bottle of water. "Mr. Harris, right?" Ramirez said gently. "Let's clear this up quick. Just tell us where you're really from, How you got here? We can work something out. Elijah looked straight at both men, voice steady despite the pain in his wrists. I am a United States citizen born in D.C. I am the elected district attorney. I will not answer any questions without my attorney present. I invoke my right to counsel right now. Paul leaned forward, face inches away. You think that fancy title protects you? We have you on video refusing a lawful order, resisting, obstruction. That's federal time if you're lying about status. Nothing was found, Elijah replied calmly. No false documents. No warrants. You have my real ID. Call my office. Call the U.S. attorney. This ends when you verify who I am. Paul laughed coldly. We'll verify when I say so. You sat in that kiosk looking suspicious. People like you don't just work federal events without papers. End of story. Ears dragged on 20:30 a.m. Still cuffed. 3:45 a.m. Elijah asked for the bathroom. They made him wait another 40 minutes. Every 10 minutes, Paul repeated the same accusations: illegal entry, false identity, interfering with federal officer. Elijah repeated the same answer: lawyer. Now, at 4:12 a.m., the kiosk security footage from DC Delights was finally pulled by an internal technician. Clear HD video showing the entire encounter from the moment Paul approached. It captured Elijah's polite smile, his calm explanation, Paul's aggressive demands, the unnecessary force of the cuffs. The technician brought the footage to the watch commander without saying a word to Paul. But Paul kept pushing in the room. You're gonna sit here until you tell the truth. No phone call yet. No lawyer yet. That's how this works when you waste our time on a holiday. Elijah closed his eyes for a second, picturing the Lincoln Memorial still lit up, families going home happy, fireworks ending in applause. He whispered to himself, this is why I do this job, so no one else has to feel this. The contrast was stark. Elijah, composed, kind even in chains, versus Paul, pacing, voice rising, convinced his instincts were infallible. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever been held by someone who refused to believe the truth right in front of them? Drop your answer in the comments. If you think no American should ever spend hours in handcuffs on their own national holiday just because of how they look, type justice. Right now, the fluorescent lights in the IC interrogation room hummed louder as the clock ticked past 5:30 a.m. on July 5, 2022. Elijah Harris still sat upright in the metal chair, wrists raw from the cuffs that had never been loosened, his navy polo shirt now wrinkled, but his voice still calm and strong. Paul Davis paced like a caged animal, repeating the same accusations for the 7th time. You're done lying. Paul snapped, slamming his palm on the table. No citizen works a kiosk without papers on federal ground. This is obstruction of a federal officer. You're looking at real charges. Elijah met his eyes without flinching. I have invoked my right to counsel. I have nothing more to say until my attorney is present. At that exact moment, 5:37 a.m., the door burst open. The watch commander, a tall, no-nonsense woman named Captain Elena Morales, stepped in, followed by 2 other senior IC supervisors. Her face was pale. In her hand, she held a tablet showing the clear HD footage from the DC Delights kiosk camera. Agent Davis, she said sharply, step outside. Now, Paul froze. Captain, I have this under control. The subject is non-compliant. Outside, Morales repeated, voice like steel. Paul stormed out. Morales turned to Elijah, her expression shifting from authority to disbelief. She unlocked the handcuffs herself, the ratchet sound echoing like freedom. Her mistress, Harris, District Attorney Harris, she said quietly, voice cracking slightly. I am so sorry. The kiosk video just came through full resolution. We see everything, your calm explanation, your name tag, your ID in the wallet. We ran the name. You are who you say you are. This should never have happened. Elijah rubbed his wrists, gently, the first relief in 8 hours. He nodded once, that same kind warmth returning to his brown eyes even after everything. Thank you, Captain. I knew the truth would come out. I just didn't expect it to take this long on the night we celebrate freedom. But the story was far from over. Captain Morales had already made the call at 5:20 a.m. The moment the technician flagged the video, she contacted the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division directly. Within 40 minutes, 2 FBI agents from the Washington field office arrived at the ICE building. This was no ordinary review. This was a full federal civil rights investigation into discriminatory enforcement and false arrest. Agent Paul Davis now the target. The FBI agents, Special Agent Marcus Reynolds, a black man in his mid-40s with a calm but commanding presence, and Special Agent Laura Chen, entered the building like a quiet storm. They seized Paul's body camera footage, the kiosk video, the arrest log, and every note Paul had written. They interviewed the two other agents who had witnessed the processing. They reviewed Paul's entire complaint history in under an hour. At 6:15 a.m., they confronted Paul in a separate room. "Agent Davis," Reynolds said, sliding the tablet across the table, "you arrested the District Attorney of Washington, D.C., while he was helping his family on the 4th of July. The video shows clear racial profiling, demanding papers from a U.S. citizen based solely on appearance and uniform. We have your past incidents, the 2011 bus stop, the 2014 Metro student, the 2019 family traffic stop, the 2020 protest detentions. Pattern is obvious." Paul's face went white. He looked suspicious. "I was doing my job," Chen leaned in. "Your job does not include ignoring a clearly stated identity, a valid driver's license, and a name tag while treating a black man in a service uniform as automatically undocumented. This is a civil rights violation under federal law." At 6:45 a.m., Elijah was formally released with full apologies from IC leadership. He walked out of the building at 7:02 a.m. into the early morning light, still wearing the wrinkled kiosk polo, but head held high. A DOJ representative drove him home personally, promising immediate action. By 8:00 a.m., Paul Davis was placed on administrative leave, his badge and gun confiscated. Federal charges were already being prepared: deprivation of rights under color of law, false arrest, and discrimination. The U.S. Attorney's Office would handle the prosecution. Elijah arrived home to his wife Michelle and son Jamal, who had been worried sick. He hugged them both tightly and said only, "It's over." But this is why we fight for better. The contrast could not have been sharper. Elijah, the man who spent his life helping others, emerging with dignity intact, versus Paul, whose years of unchecked assumptions had finally caught up to him in the most public federal building in the Capitol. This single incident, captured on that humble kiosk camera, triggered a full-scale federal investigation that would expose more than one bad actor. It would force real accountability. If you believe no one in America should ever be arrested on their own holiday simply because of the color of their skin, type justice right now. The federal investigation into IC agent Paul Davis moved with relentless speed once the kiosk video and Elijah Harris's true identity were confirmed. By 9:00 a.m., on July 5, 2022, the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division had opened a full criminal case under 18 U.S.C. and 242, deprivation of rights under color of law, and a parallel civil rights probe. Special Agent Marcus Reynolds and his team of 6 FBI agents took over the ICE field office conference room, sealing it off. They spent the next 48 hours reviewing every scrap of evidence: the full 2-hour kiosk security footage, Paul's bodied-worn cameras, which he had activated only after the arrest, the processing logs, radio transmissions, and Paul's personnel files spanning 14 years. They interviewed Captain Elena Morales and the 2 agents who had witnessed the booking. They spoke with the watch commander who had first seen the video. They pulled every complaint ever filed against Paul: the 2011 bus, terminal detention of the U.S.C. born Latino worker, the 2014 Howard University student stop, the 2019 black family traffic stop near the airport, the 2020 protest detentions, and the 2022 break room comment about people who don't belong. Pattern after pattern of targeting black and brown individuals based on appearance alone. Witnesses described Paul's tone as cold and certain, his decisions as never second-guessed. On July 7, Paul Davis was formally notified he was being terminated immediately for cause. His badge, credentials, and service weapon were already gone. At a closed disciplinary hearing inside the ICE headquarters, the panel cited egregious misconduct, repeated racial profiling, and abuse of authority. Paul sat stone-faced, repeating only, "I was doing my job." The panel disagreed. He was fired on the spot. The first of 3 officers disciplined in the fallout. 2 supervisors received written reprimands for failing to address his earlier complaints. Criminal charges followed on July 12. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia indicted Paul on 2 felony counts: willful deprivation of constitutional rights and false arrest with discriminatory intent. The maximum penalty was 10 years in federal prison and a $250,000 fine. Paul's attorney argued qualified immunity, but the video evidence was devastating, crystal Clear moments of Elijah calmly stating his identity, while Paul ignored it and tightened the cuffs anyway. The civil lawsuit Elijah filed on July 15 moved even faster. In D.C. Superior Court, he sought damages for false arrest, emotional distress, and violation of his civil rights. The city and federal government settled quickly to avoid a public trial. Paul personally was ordered to pay $185,000 in compensatory damages, money that came straight from his retirement account and future wages. He also faced a lifetime ban from any federal law enforcement position. While the system held Paul accountable, Elijah Harris turned the pain into purpose. Back at the district attorney's office on July 8, he called an emergency staff meeting. Still wearing a simple button-down shirt, wrists bandaged from the cuffs, he stood tall and spoke with the same quiet strength that had defined his entire career. This happened to me, a black man serving hot dogs on the 4th of July, because someone looked at my skin and my uniform and decided I didn't belong. He told his team, if it can happen to the district attorney, imagine what happens to the young black father, the Latina mother, the immigrant grandfather who has no title to hide behind. We are going to fix this. That week, Elijah launched the Dignity First initiative inside the D.C. prosecutor's office. Mandatory annual bias training for every prosecutor and support staff, a new policy requiring any federal request for ID during public events to be documented and reviewed by a supervisor within 1 hour, and a hotline for citizens to report profiling incidents directly to his office. He personally met with IC leadership and pushed for joint de-escalation workshops between local prosecutors and federal agents. By August, he had testified before the D.C. Council, advocating for legislation that would require body cameras on all federal officers during public patrols and strip qualified immunity in clear cases of racial profiling. Elijah's kindness never wavered. He visited the D.C. Delights kiosk the following weekend, helped Marcus serve customers again, and posed for photos with families who recognized him, always with that warm smile, always reminding people, we celebrate freedom by protecting it for everyone. Paul Davis, meanwhile, moved out of his Fairfax townhouse in September, took a low-paying security job, and began mandatory anger management classes as part of his probation. The man who once believed his instincts were never wrong now faced a future defined by the single moment he chose suspicion over humanity. The contrast remained powerful. One man used the worst night of his life to build something better for thousands. The other lost everything because he refused to see the human being standing in front of him. Comment below if you think stories like this prove why we need stronger oversight of federal agents. 4 months later, October 12, 2022, the federal courtroom in the District of Columbia was packed. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, local stations, all present. In the front row sat Elijah's family, Michelle holding Aisha's hand, Marcus and Jamal beside them. In the gallery, dozens of witnesses from that 4th of July, the young mother with her phone, the veterans in red U.S.A. t-shirts, the elderly couple who had gasped the loudest. Elijah entered last. The same calm, confident stride he had at the kiosk. Navy, blue suit, white shirt, silver at the temples catching the light. He sat beside the prosecutor and simply nodded to the room. No anger, no triumph. Just the quiet strength of a man who had spent his life defending others and was now defending himself. Paul Davis sat at the defense table. Thinner, no uniform, cheap gray suit. Shoulders slumped, eyes on the floor. His attorney whispered final instructions. The judge announced United States v. Paul Davis. First came the video, full uncut from the DC Delights kiosk camera. The courtroom fell silent. All 11 minutes and 47 seconds. Elijah's warm smile. What can I get you, officer? Paul's cold, immigration documents. Right now. The cuffs clicking too tight, the shove toward the car while fireworks exploded overhead. When the screen showed Elijah gazing at the Lincoln Memorial, whispering, "Justice is not given, it is demanded with dignity." A collective breath escaped the room. The prosecutor called witnesses. 7 people confirmed he was just handing snow cones to kids. Captain Morales testified how at 5:37 a.m. she watched the footage and realized this was the end of one man's career and the beginning of a real conversation for all of us. Elijah took the stand for 2 hours. Calm, no theatrics. I wasn't angry at Agent Davis personally. I was angry at a system that let him believe for 14 years that black skin and a service uniform were enough reason to arrest someone. That night, I wasn't thinking about myself. I was thinking about the young father who doesn't have my office number in his phone. The single mother who won't be believed. The child who watches his dad taken away in cuffs on a holiday of freedom. When defense counsel asked, "Maybe you simply looked suspicious?" Elijah looked straight at Paul and answered, "I looked like an American helping his family on his day off." That's exactly how every one of us should look on Independence Day. The jury deliberated for 47 minutes. Verdict guilty on all counts. Willful deprivation of rights under color of law, false arrest with discriminatory intent. Sentencing came November 3. The judge, Mr. Davis, you didn't just break the law. You betrayed the oath you swore to protect this country. 42 months in federal prison. Fine of $185,000 already paid in the civil settlement. Lifetime ban from any law enforcement position at any level. And a public apology to Mr. Harris and to the American people. Paul stood. His voice shook for the first time in his life. I thought I was doing my job. I was wrong. Elijah rose. The judge allowed him a final word. I accept the apology. But apologies without change are empty words. Today I speak not only for myself. I speak for everyone still afraid to wear a kiosk uniform, a university hoodie, or simply walk down the street in their own country. The courtroom rose and applauded. Not cheering, applauding. Dignified, just like Elijah himself. 1 week later, the Dignity First initiative became mandatory for all federal agencies in the District of Columbia. Body cameras on every public patrol during holidays, now law. Joint de-escalation training between ICE and local prosecutors, standard procedure. In the first year, profiling complaints dropped 63%. Elijah was re-elected in 2024 with 79% of the vote. By 2025, he was already considering a run for Senate, and on July 4, 2023, the Harris family stood again at the DC Delights kiosk. Elijah in the same navy polo with the logo, but this time beside him. Marcus, Michelle, the kids, and Paul Davis. Not in uniform. In a plain white t-shirt with a volunteer badge. He had completed 200 hours of community service handing out food to the homeless. Elijah had personally offered him the opportunity. No one should be left broken, he said then. Not even the people who broke others. Paul said quietly, "Thank you for not breaking me completely." Elijah shook his hand. "Now you can help lift others too." Justice prevailed not because a bad man went to prison. It prevailed because a good man refused to become bitter and forced the system to become better. Advice: if you ever face something like this, stay as calm and polite as possible. Speak clearly and loudly. I am a U.S. citizen. My name is, I am requesting an attorney and a phone call to my family A office. If it's safe, record on your phone. Say out loud, I am recording this interaction for my safety. Memorize the photograph badge number, name, vehicle plate. After the incident, contact the ACLU, your local prosecutor's office, or the civil rights hotline immediately, the U.S. 1-866-696-6772. Do not sign anything without a lawyer present. Tell your story. Video and witnesses change everything. You are never required to prove you belong in your own country. You already do by birth or by right. Your dignity is not a privilege, it is your right. Thank you for staying with me through all 6 parts of this story. If it moved you, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Here we tell real stories about people who never gave up. In the comments, write justice if you believe no one should ever have to prove their right to be free on Independence Day. Or share your own story, even one line. We read every comment. Share this video with friends. Let stories like this become fewer and stories of victory become more common. This has been your storyteller. Until the next story, take care of each other and always demand justice with dignity.